All right, the Rivers State Government and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission are on the war path. The EFCC is investigating the Rivers State Government for alleged cash withdrawals totaling about 117 billion naira in the last 3 years, which it says violated the Money Laundering Prohibition Act.
Yeah, the EFCC, who cited some of the withdrawals, which he said were curious, said 45 different checks were issued in the name of one person on June the 8th, 2015. According to him, a total of 450 million naira were withdrawn from the state government account in one of the banks on the said date. The EFCC says it is putting plans in motion to invite the Director of Finance and Administration in the Rivers State Government House for interrogation this week.
But Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike has declared that no official of the Rivers State Government will appear before the EFCC over what he called politically motivated investigations until the Commission approached the Court of Appeal to set aside the 2007 judgment, barring the Commission from investigating the state. Well, joining us from Port Harcourt is a public affairs commentator, Dr. Sophiri Peterside. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Ngozi.
Yeah, good to have you. Now, if there is a ruling, a perpetual injunction from a federal high court in Rivers State that the EFCC should not in any way interfere in the financial affairs or, of Rivers State, why then is the EFCC going ahead to investigate whether in the case of Rivers State or Benue for that matter, or even Akwa Ibom?
Honestly, it is really surprising because the beauty of democracy is that it is a government that is predicated on rules and regulations. And of course, all arms of government need to appreciate the fact that there's interdependence and that a decision of the High Court, of a court, ought to be obeyed, because that is the only way we can give credence and integrity to the judicial process in our country. So if there is a judgment of court saying that EFCC cannot do that, and I think that the right way to go is actually to appeal against that judgment. And until that has happened, the status quo needs. I think that that is what ought to happen under a normal system where rules and regulations and laws are obeyed.
All right, we have spoken to some lawyers several times who have said that, or who have categorically said that the EFCC has the right to investigate state governments, the way the monies are being, used in state governments. Not necessarily to shut the state down, but to at least to investigate. But if there's a court of law also saying that, or restraining or barring EFCC from doing that, does it seem like there's some conflict within the law as to the understanding what EFCC has the right to do or not do?
Yeah, honestly speaking, Mike, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a sociologist, and I think that legal luminaries actually had explained what the law's position is on this matter, particularly over the case of Benue. And so if the law says that you can't do this, or a judgment of court, whether the law has said you can do it or not, but if there's a judgment of court, we need to actually, as citizens, obey the judgment of the court. And until a court of a superior jurisdiction and a competent jurisdiction actually delivers a contrary judgment, I think that is the judgment of that high court, which has said that EFC cannot do that, actually continues to exist until a court, a superior court, rules otherwise. I think that that is the way to go under a system predicated on rule of law. I think that that is what ought to happen.
Now, there are dangers, of course. I mean, Wike has already said that what EFCC is doing, or what it amounts to, is just simply a witch hunt. How dangerous is this, really? I mean, that for EFCC, who wants to fight against corruption, what it perceives as corruption, of course, the allegations are weighty. 45 withdrawals of 10 million in one single day, according to the EFCC, that these withdrawals were done in 3 years.
Honestly, I support every move by the EFCC actually to address or investigate issues of corruption. Because actually, corruption is very endemic in our country. And a lot of the revenue, a lot of funds that would have been deployed in bringing happiness to the greatest number of the people had actually been embedded, in corruption. So any action taken by EFCC actually to address this fundamental problem, every well-thinking citizen of our country will support that. So I think that that is in order. But however, the EFCC also need to act within the context of the law. And only very recently, before the account of Benue government was state government was frozen, and the account of Akwa Ibom state was also frozen. It was in the public domain by the media, the Rivers State government and some other key politicians on the other side, or who had actually defected from the ruling party to the opposition parties, that the EFCC is going to go after them. So these institutions of states should not be deployed actually to settle political scores. That is my own worry. EFCC need to do its job, and is doing a good job, but that job must be pursued and executed within the ambit of the law. And anything outside what the law says, that will not be correct. So I think that is the issue. And these are institutions of the state. These institutions of the state cannot be captured by a crop of political elites to settle political scores. And what those who occupy these very vital institutions of state should actually understand is that power is transient. These institutions would outlive every other political appointees. These institutions are created by law and continue to remain. And so positional incumbent will also know that actually their responsibility is to the citizens of this country and not to any political leadership. And once that is understood, I think that these agencies that are very, very fundamental in our national development will perform its duties without fear and favor.
All right. They often said that perception is key when it comes to getting things right sometimes. It's very coincidental from watchers and some persons who said that it so happened that states that have their accounts frozen and now River State all are members of the opposition or run by opposition, one way or the other. And we now hear that the River State governor is saying this is outrightly a witch hunt. When it comes to perception, you just said that the EFCC is supposed to be seen as doing the right thing. But taking from the fact that Benue State is now PDP, Akwa Ibom is PDP, River State is PDP, in the eyes of those who are watching from afar, do you think that the perception here looks like it is a witch hunt, according to how the River State governor puts it?
Now, honestly, what is worrisome is that from what the EFCC said, that these are transactions that took place, some years back. Now, if these are transactions that took place some years back, how come that EFCC is suddenly on the road to the 2019 general election had decided actually that some of these states, like River State, need to be investigated? That is what is worrisome. Because if EFCC, based on facts at its disposal, found that this is the situation, EFCC would have taken this action long ago or started that process. But if the process is started within this period where tensions are high, where there are allegations and counter allegations of using state institutions actually against political opponents, that is the worry that it creates. Otherwise, EFCC is an important agency in our country. EFCC had actually recovered some stolen funds. So we think that EFCC is a very wonderful institution. But the timing and the circumstances under which oftentimes it takes a decision is what is worrisome and creates the impression that that institution is not performing its role the way it ought to, but rather have been deployed as an instrument to domesticate members of the opposition to quietism. And I think that is worry, very serious worry.
Of course, it does seem that EFCC is in a very precarious situation now, I mean, between the devil and the deep blue sea, like they say. How can the EFCC go about this without, the general perception that EFCC may be doing the right thing, but the wrong way? How exactly can EFCC go about this in order not to leave a sour taste in the mouth?
Honestly, what EFCC need to do, EFCC need to act within the context of the law it must act within the ambit of the law. For instance, if it is correct that there's a judgment of a court that says that River State account or any other government account cannot be investigated, I think that law, that decision of the court must be obeyed. EFCC itself is a creation of law. And so if it's a creation of the law, it cannot actually also be anti-law. So I think that is the problem. So EFCC needs to look at itself, it's self-searching, and see the extent to which it must act. Now, if it must act in the context of the law. Anything outside the context of the law creates that suspicion, even when the agency may have good intention. And I think that is what the problem is. So EFCC needs to search itself. EFCC needs to look at what the law says on any action it wants to take. Because they have legal department, and the legal department should be able to advise, on what to do. And also, some of this investigation should be timely. You can't wait for how many years, or when it's very, very close to an election before you begin to take action.
But does timing really matter? I mean, one could assume too that, according to EFCC, these withdrawals happened in 2015, more or less within, of course, 3 years, right? That in 2 days alone, 445 million, is it 45 million? Yeah, 45 different checks were presented over the counter on the 8th of June 2015. And on the second day, being the 9th of June, about 50 different checks were also presented over the counter, where 500 million was withdrawn. Does the timing really matter if, in the mind of the EFCC, it discovered this kind of discrepancy? Should it matter that the EFCC is coming up with this now, beyond this whole perception of this is a witch hunt and all of that? Should we say that the EFCC should not do its job if it finds that some things have happened that shouldn't have happened?
No. Like I keep saying, I'm not one of those who support that EFCC shouldn't do its work. And I still insist that EFCC is an important institution, an important agency in our country. It's actually also doing a lot to make sure that a lot of revenue that would have been, that are trapped by corruption are actually released. But what I'm saying is that EFCC also is an institution. This institution does not operate in a vacuum. This institution exists within the context of the Nigerian state. And of course, the political mood of the nation actually need to also be taken into consideration in certain decisions, in certain actions that you take. Particularly when it had been put in the public domain that some state governments are actually going to, be investigated based on what they consider to be certain irregularities in the financial transactions. But the worry, like I keep saying, is the timing. You may think that, I don't think there's anything wrong for EFCC to insist that things be done properly. But you don't wait too long. And so that is what the problem is. So now, even when the agency means well, the general perception is that this agency is on a witch hunt mission. So I think that is what is the issue. No, the agency must act in a manner that presents it as doing what is correct without fear or favor. And I support them. But I think that also the national mood, the political mood of the country, of the states that are in opposition also need to be taken into consideration. Because that will begin to also need to be taken into consideration. Because that will begin to becloud the good intention of EFCC in execution of its mandate.
All right. You have commended the EFCC several times. The EFCC has been on ground for almost 20 years now. And one Nigerians would expect and look at a metamorphosis, an advancement in approaches to fight against corruption. How would you assess the mode by which EFCC goes about fighting the corruption, where Nigerians can have confidence in, where neither side is saying, oh, because I am a member of the opposition, so I'm being witch hunted, or if I have issues, just jump into the ruling party and then your sins are forgiven, and all of that. How would you assess EFCC from that window of doing its job rightly in the eyes of Nigerians?
Honestly, the only way EFCC can, be perceived to be doing the right thing is that, in fact, in its quest for making sure that this endemic corruption in our society is actually addressed, reduced, minimized, because it cannot actually be eliminated immediately, is that he should perform his duty in a manner that presents it to the public that is actually very, very fair. For instance, why is it that the accounts of state governments that are in, that are in the ruling parties are not being investigated? The impression seems to be created that once a state is in a ruling party, it can do no wrong. But if the state leaves the ruling party, then that state is subject to be investigated. That is what the problem is. We want to see in this country, I'm a sociologist, to see the extent to which EFCC will also go against, state governments that belong to the ruling party and which, of course, there are records or should be subjected to investigation to see the extent to which is, obeying the financial regulations. But EFCC, if it continues to go against political states that are in opposition political parties, or states that used to be part of the ruling party and suddenly decide to join the opposition party, then that creates the problem. And it's an image problem for that agency in the wonderful work it's doing for this country. So there must be, EFCC must be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Rivers State Governor, Nyesom Wike, has accused EFCC of usurping the duties of the State Assembly, within which, purview, or whose purview it is to investigate such matters. How can the state assemblies, whether in Rivers, in Benue, wherever in Nigeria, actually step in to ensure that the executive arm of government is, doing right as far as this issue of corruption is concerned?
Well, honestly, we need to actually also act on the part of the law. And if the law, states that it is the responsibility of state house of assemblies actually to investigate the financial dealings and transactions of state government, then so be it. I also know that the worry of certain citizens of our country is that in most states, the legislative arm of government appears to be an extension of the executive arm of government. So that is the worry. But I think also it is part of a constitutional problem, because the Constitution needs to be amended, and certain sections that cripples the activities of the State House of Assembly in investigating the executive arm of government needed actually to be addressed and, of course, amended. Because in most cases, these State House of Assemblies are not performing the oversight function, and that is what creates a problem. But that is not a basis actually for an agency that needed to act in context of the law to actually bypass the law.
Okay.
I think that is the issue. But of course, for these State House of Assemblies to be able to do their jobs, we as citizens of this country have a role to perform in this in this aspect.
Okay.
The quality, the character of those who elect into the State of Assemblies is also a problem.
Okay.
And the citizens need to take that into consideration when they come to elect.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sofiri Peter Said, for joining us from Port Harcourt. Thank you. We must thank you so much.